forward and go to an expert talk from Paul. Paul's in the back. He's going to talk about why the hybrid world of work will mean a golden era for internal communications. I'm very curious because we're all faced with this world of hybrid work, and the verdict is not out yet. What it really means. Paul, I also read in your bio that you have been head of communications for the Red Cross, and perhaps you can share a bit about that in your story as well.
Of course, thank you very much. So this is the last time you'll be seeing me on the stage over the course of this event, so don't worry, I won't be back after this. So this is the title of this talk, and to be very honest and to be very frank, after yesterday's discussions, I felt you know, a lot of the talk that I had prepared would be telling you what you already know and what you're already thinking about. So over a few glasses of wine last night with Lottie and a few other people, I started rethinking what I might talk about today, which is a bit of a challenge because the slides haven't changed, but we like a good challenge. So this is an interesting graphic which is going to be in the background, but I'll just give a short introduction about myself. I'll just tell a story, I think, that has sort of followed me throughout my life and has been hugely influential in how I approach communications and what I love about communications. And actually, it's very linked to what you've just presented. When I was in college, I did some volunteering for what were termed as delinquent youth. These were kids who had gone on the wrong side of the law. They were too young to go to jail. They had to do community service. They might have stolen cars, burned down things, got into some trouble, GBH, things like that. And I ran video workshops and audio workshops to create documentary films, to teach them how to use the equipment and to go out and produce a documentary. I didn't do any of the script writing. I didn't do any of the using of the equipment, and the story, everything was theirs. They made this fantastic documentary about their neighborhood and the challenges they had growing up in their neighborhood. The only thing I did, right, apart from, you know, the teaching and training, I did the credits, right, because I had access to a studio. So when they'd finished editing it, I put the credits on, and I brought it back, and we watched it all together, and they loved what they did, and they said the credits were shit, right? So the only thing I had done they didn't like. So they said, leave it to us and we'll do the credits. So they went out and they graffitied all over their neighborhood, and they filmed the graffiti, and the graffiti was the credits, and it was so much better, right? It was so much connected to the story, it was real, and it was them. So that was a light bulb moment for me, which is, I basically use it as a North Star, a guiding light all my life in communications, is that the community will guide you. The community, your audience, if you like empowering community, empowering audience will give you the most impactful communications. And I see that in my current role with LiveTiles. I see employees as communities. I try to learn as much as I can and empower as much as I can. And I'll come to that in a moment. In terms of my own career, that led me to working in many different countries with the International Red Cross, for instance. So one example of that would be where we used technology in Haiti after the devastating earthquake in 2010 to basically engage and connect with over 1 million people via their mobile devices. And this was the first time that there was such an extensive level of community engagement where the people who were most invested in the outcomes of that operation actually owned the decision-making process and really influenced the decision-making process. So we discovered things that we would never have discovered if we'd come with our sort of expert mindset and sort of, you know, pre-assumptions around what was needed in an emergency. So again, very, very, very interesting. In the UN, I ended up working with the UN then with the ITU. It's the UN agency for ICTs, essentially. And we did a lot of that as well in the ITU. So we, for instance, we crowdsourced the very first, and I believe to this day, the only resolution that has been put forward at the UN General Assembly. And we crowdsourced it from over 10,000 young people around the world about the need to involve young people in the development of the Sustainable Development Goals, to give young people a voice. And that was presented by the President of Costa Rica, because it has to be presented by a head of state in the UN General Assembly. So lots of really, it's like the shortest way home is often the longest way around, right? I mean, that's that approach. But it is definitely the most impactful and the most rewarding way to do communications. So when I moved back to Ireland and I came into contact with LiveTiles, which is the company I'm working for, a digital workplace employee experience company, and you'll see some stats on the board here. I was walking by, they had an event in the town that I live in, and it was called Tech Life Balance, actually was the name of the event. And I saw their values written on a sort of one of these things in the background, and I thought, we are decent human beings. And I thought, okay, I'm interested to work with the private sector, but I come from this very humanitarian background, and that sounds really interesting. What's all that about? So I went in and I talked to them, and I discovered it's a tech company that basically cares as much, if not more, about the people than the tech, right? It's an extraordinarily different approach to designing technology. And we have as many people doing organizational behavior and behavioral psychologists as we have coders almost. So it's a huge focus on the business, and it's really about respecting people's attention and respecting people's time, their mental health. And I'll come to that a little bit in a moment. You'll see from the slides some of our sort of well-known brands that I put up there that are customers of ours. There's a couple of different case studies here that are of interest, perhaps. Entain is not maybe a name you know, but you probably know it's a federation of brands. It's like Ladbrokes and Betfred and all this sporting and gaming, online gaming stuff. So they're using the platform to connect their people from lots of different locations, for instance. Foot Locker, of course, major retailer in sports, so they're using it for frontline workers, because we believe that employee experience is for everyone, right? You have to include everyone. It comes back to the authenticity that we all want to achieve, and that we're all talking about here today. So in this context, our chairperson today told us context is 80 points of the IQ or something like that. So it's like we can't pretend the pandemic hasn't happened. We all want to forget it and move forward, but not move forward as business as usual. Absolutely not. Anyone who's doing that, I would say it's not only a mistake, but I'd say, particularly for business leaders, businesses will crash and burn if they think that they can just continue as usual. So we saw some of the things that have changed forever. This incredible phenomenon that's called the Great Resignation. I'm not sure anybody has a really precise understanding of what's behind that. I mean, there's obvious certain overlapping factors that are influencing it. We have the rising cost of living. Just before I was coming to the airport, I filled up my car. It cost €100 to fill it. 12 months ago, it used to cost like €55. So it's literally doubled, and that's across everything. And I'm sure that's being experienced by everyone, and particularly people who are already on sort of lower incomes are really, really struggling. So we have this sort of very strange dynamic of the Great Resignation, and yet there's this extremely high cost of living and talks about a global recession and all of that. So how do they fit together? That's a sort of a new dynamic. The flexible workplace, I mean, it's normalized, right? We basically all agreed on that yesterday. We'll drop the word hybrid at some stage, and it'll just be how we work. And we'll reset, we'll regather, and we'll find ways to do it. And in terms of the Great Resignation itself, I mean, how the popular media are defining it is basically there's this mass movement of people away from their jobs. But I think it's also really what's going on. It's an escalation in the war for talent. I think that's how a lot of leaders, and I spoke to a lot, my favorite part of my job is speaking with customers and the employees of those customers. And they feel this was already happening before the pandemic. There was a real struggle for talent, and that has really escalated into a war for talent. And of course, in that war, you guys and the role that you have in your organizations, and the means by which you engage and communicate with your employees is extremely significant in terms of surviving this and thriving in this particular context. I was at the Dublin Tech Summit a couple of weeks ago in Dublin. There was 8,000 people in attendance, and there was a lot of booths from a lot of tech companies, but there was also an awful lot of booths from tech recruiter companies, right? It's almost like it has become the #1 priority for many in the tech industry, for sure, in terms of attracting new talent. We did a global survey at the beginning of this year. We called it the Global Pulse Check on Employee Experience. I picked out the German statistic because we didn't have a Dutch one, and Germany is nearer. But basically, 46% of people in Germany considering to leave their jobs and are actively looking for jobs. The global figure is something similar. It's 45% of employees globally are saying now is a good time to find a new job, right? So this is real. On the tech side of things, Google did a survey recently. We can see that 3 in 5 workers in the tech sector say they are not interested in returning to the workplace full time. So the trend is unstoppable. I think many of us would recognize that, but maybe there's a lot of organizations, a lot of leaders of organizations out there that are slow to recognize that, or that are hoping that it will abate. It will not abate, because it's now an essential ingredient in this sort of employee-driven world of seeking new ways of working. But what does it all mean for internal communications, or for people involved in change, right? I think, and this also came out quite strongly yesterday, that change brings opportunity. Change is constant, so that means opportunity is constant. I think that would work as a formula. You're the mathematics guy. I guess there's some logic there. Internal communications has become business critical. So that's also an opportunity to get really a seat at the table if you didn't have it already, to get better investment in your work and your activities, because it's so much more recognized as being strategic, and it's been essential, particularly in this huge challenge around the war for talent. Diversity inclusion has become and it's part of the culture code of the organizations, but it becomes so tangible. I really get the sense, that before the pandemic, if you're talking about things like diversity and inclusion, or talking about, the cultural dynamic of your organization, it was a nice conversation. It was nice to have, but those that were really focused on the bottom line weren't so interested to have it, or they thought it should be something that was sort of assigned to the HR department. But now it's tangible. They really, really understand it, that diversity and inclusion, the data is there, is absolutely essential to having an authentic voice, an authentic brand. And I think the statistics are something like employees are 5.4 times more likely to stay with an organization if they feel it's really inclusive and diverse. And that comes back again. And this is a conversation I think that has happened in several ways over the last few days. That comes back again to including everyone in your workplace, in the communications, in the storytelling, and making all the efforts we can to bring everybody on board. So how do we make this happen? I'm just going to throw these up on the screen and go through them quite quickly, but not necessarily comprehensively. We're very happy to talk about them afterwards. So we have a session after the coffee break on the employee voice, but this has become really important. We're working with a UN client at the moment out of their headquarters in Geneva. Their #1 requisite, a requirement from us, is that they can roll out what they call grassroots storytelling. They want that authentic voice of their colleagues to get through and to really impact the culture of the organization, so it is more authentic, so that people have much closer proximity, let's say from Geneva or New York, to what colleagues are experiencing in other locations. I think this is also important. We have an example of this, of a UK client that works in tea and coffee, in the tea and coffee business, and they've made great strides in bringing in the voice of factory workers from their production plants in Asia and in India particularly, and in Sri Lanka, and it has totally rejuvenated and revived how they perceive the culture and brand of their business. So this is such a huge opportunity right now to really make this happen. We have our colleagues from Swoop down there. I'm sure they'll like the third bullet point there, that the gold standard analytics is really needed to drive investment. That analytics in our company at the moment, it is the number one thing on our technology roadmap that we're going to really come out of the blocks with some game-changing analytics in the next couple of months, something that integrates all the analytics across all the different channels. And that's because all of the communications leaders that we're talking to are telling us this is really, really important for them. They really need to understand it. You need it for your upward reporting. You need it to justify the ROI on your investments in the technology and teams that you're putting together to do this. So lots of great opportunities there. The internal comms being business critical, I think we did see some really great examples of that yesterday around the purpose-driven campaigns that are coming to the fore. I mean, we just had a presentation on it as well, but from the fireside chat yesterday, it's really understood as being so central and important. I was at a customer meeting not long ago in the UK with a government agency. I can't name them, but they're very mission-driven themselves around inclusion and working with lots of marginalised communities. And the director of communications said something to me that really stuck in my mind, and I really liked it. And she said that we can't compete on price with the tech giants, you know, with Google and Amazon and all these guys that are in this war for talent, but we can compete on purpose. So what she wants is that the talent, particularly the young talent that's coming in to this government agency, and these were the way she described it, and I thought it was really good, that they can reflect a part of their own identity and their own sense of self throughout the business, that they have the tools and the means to communicate what's important to them. And this is such an important issue, particularly for digital natives. I know we have some digital natives in the room, because I was talking last night about during the times when there was no mobile phones, and there was a guy looking at me like what? There was a time before mobile phones? When you used to bump into people spontaneously, or you go to a festival and you wouldn't meet anyone for 3 days because, you know, you couldn't find each other. But and there was other reasons as well. But like this is so it's so important. And in terms of digital natives, in 2025, 75% of the workforce will be digital natives. So they're taken over essentially, right? The game is changing very fast, and for them, the reason I focus on that particular demographic is because that purpose-driven, mission-driven culture and connection with their workplace is extremely important. In that Global Pulse survey that we did, that I mentioned, 48% of people between the ages of 18 and 30 said they would leave a job for a better employee experience where they were closer to the mission and values of the company. Like, that's incredible. That means that purpose is essentially a higher currency than salary for many of this demographic. So why that's important is because in terms of your roles and your jobs and the platforms you choose to use to empower these people, you're directly involved in the front lines of this war for talent. I already mentioned diversity and inclusion, and I've just put there, like, no more excuses. I mean, seriously, for any organizations that are, you know, putting out manuals, or they're just, you know, they're so white and vanilla or whatever, I mean, it has to stop. Because now with the proof case that we've all gone through over the last 2 years, is that people can work from anywhere, they can be productive from anywhere, which means you can hire anyone. So people that were left out of the workforce, maybe it's a single parent in a rural area but has great, marketing skills, whatever, they can be now part of the workforce. And I think every company really needs to set ambitious standards for diversity and inclusion. It'll be a more dynamic, healthier company. And as I said, people are 5.4 times more likely to stay with the company. That's from Gallup. The culture code, I'm going to plug a book for somebody who I don't even know, but hopefully we'll get to know him someday. Maybe you know this book. It's called The Culture Code. A guy called Daniel Coyle. He also has a book called The Talent Code, and he has a book which just came out called The Culture Playbook. I would really highly recommend him. And as a communications person, reading things about talent and culture, that's already a shift, right? That's already a change. The mindset is changing. But Daniel identifies these three areas as the key pillars of culture, and everything comes down to culture. And what I like about Daniel Coyle, by the way, is he's not. Don't get me wrong, he's not like an Instagram influencer who comes out with like the most obvious statements, but beautifully produced and gets like 1 million likes. I can never understand the popularity of these. But what he has done, he's actually gone into the trenches. He's worked as a researcher in factories, in organizations for months and months and months, doing real evidence-based study. And every challenge, every single time, it always came down to the culture in the organization. And these particular pillars, and I think they're coming out already, there's a new form of leadership, there's a new form of understanding, there's an enlightenment almost, you could say. So the psychological safety, do you feel safe enough in your company to be critical, to be outspoken, for instance, is a really key one, because again, that's the trust, right? That's the trust, it's the authenticity. The vulnerability, being, particularly for leaders, to talk about mistakes that they've made, to be vulnerable. We're not all perfect. We're humans, right? So we're talking about a more human-centered workplace, and that vulnerability is an extremely important part of that. Nobody knows it all. We all need each other for collaboration. We all need to support each other. Some of us have good days and bad days, and these are really important things to be considering in communication strategies and how we engage employees. And purpose, we've already talked the socks off purpose, but I think this is essentially one of the most important things that will really help to retain and attract employees in the near future. In the Gallup State of the Workplace report, probably all of you or most of you are familiar with this report. It's been coming out every year for decades, I think. It's a very good report, and normally it measures engagement. And now they've sort of redefined engagement into different types of engagement. It only came out a couple of weeks ago, by the way, and anybody can download it for free. Definitely worth a read. It's one of the better reports in terms of how they do the research. But this, engagement has gone down. Okay, it's always going down in the Gallup report. Sometimes it goes up a little bit and then it goes down. But this one I thought was, for me, the most interesting statistic that came out of it, that 60% of people are emotionally detached from their work. So you have a lot of work to do, guys. 60% of your people are potentially emotionally detached from their work. Now, what is employee experience if it's not about the connection, including the emotional connection that you have to your employer and your organization? An employee experience along all the touchstones of an employee's journey. So there's a huge amount to be learned from that. And 19% are miserable. That's a lot. You'll have read a lot about the attention economy. And I think this has a lot to do with the emotional disconnection. That's the link there, is this long time issue that we've had in communications around noise in the workplace, over communication, constant app switching. Somebody mentioned it yesterday as one of the big challenges that organizations have. There is a statistic that for organizations with 500 employees or more, the average amount of app switching that happens in a day is 120, right? It's just nuts. So when I mentioned earlier that in LiveTiles we're as much, if not more, about the people than the technology. This is something we're passionately looking at and obsessed with. So what this means essentially is, well, first of all, putting the employee at the center of their own employee experience. They are the experts of their own employee experience. And we've done a lot of research with employees recently. I'll quickly jump on that in a moment because I'm keeping an eye on the time here, Mr. Chair. So it's essentially at the intersection of people and technology, within that cultural sort of parameters of an organization. So we would be coming at it from a place, of course, we've got all this sort of seamless integration and AI-enabled personalization and all this fantastic technology, but it's really about the people that are using it, how it's affecting not just their productivity, but their mental health. If you think about, the measure of engagement that the likes of Facebook uses in terms of likes and shares and all that, we'd probably be coming at it from the exact opposite direction. We're developing solutions that encourage people to get off their screen and go and talk to people and have a cup of coffee in real life with people, or do something active, or go spend some time with your family, or whatever it might be. Having your employees constantly on screens is not an indicator of success, right? It's really, as was mentioned yesterday, it's about the value they're getting about it. So it's this affects our design principles as a technology company. So it's all about being where the user is. That's a major design principle of ours, and removing all the complexity for the user, because it's the complexity that creates a lot of this sort of mind fog and frustration. And this is extremely important, and it's we are in a battle for the attention of our employees, and I'm sure you all know that. But we have to really respect their attention and the amount of pressure we put on each other and on our employees. The amount of pressure we put on our attention span, because it is directly linked to how much you enjoy your work, but also, serious issues like mental health and stress. So it's something to be extremely cognizant of. And it came up, there was a survey mentioned yesterday, I can't remember which presentation it was, sorry, but well-being was the second most important thing that was mentioned from an employee survey. So it's really one of these issues that has come up from being nice to have to a need to have. Very, very quickly, if you go onto the homepage of our website, livetilesglobal.com, and just find the blog, the very first blog is on this topic, so I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but I think it could be helpful. We did a deep research with 165 employees from around the world. This wasn't a monkey survey or a pulse check or whatever. It was in-person interviews, extensive interviews with 165 people. And basically, we came out with, now this is not exhaustive, there is no silver bullet, right? We should all have t-shirts made with that on it. There is no silver bullet. But I found this very helpful and very useful, and that's why I read the research. We haven't shared the research publicly yet. I will try and get a public version of it to ensure anonymity and all of that sort of stuff. I can share it via Victoria to the Unleashed community if anyone is interested. But already the blog captures quite a lot of it. But these are the sort of the four persona types that came out of it. There's the achiever. This is a really busy, harangued, always rushing after goals, quite often frontline workers, and they just want the information now, and they want it to be accessible. They have a feeling that sometimes they're not in the loop because they don't know where to find the information. So that's one cohort. The seeker, quite often younger or new joins who are really seeking connections. They have lots of time to give to navigating the internet and finding all the resources they need, and really discovering themselves and their colleagues. The soloist, quite often, mid-career, just wants to be left alone and do the job themselves, and just, make it as easy as possible for me to get what I need to do the job, and don't bother me after that, right, with all of your campaigns and what have you. And the connector, quite often at a higher level in the organization, is connecting different parts of the organization, needs to be supported and needs engagement, needs to be able to see that people are engaging with all of the important strategic issues they might be working on, etc. So I think it's worth looking at, because what we're doing with this research, by the way, is we're using it for the UX across the user experience across all of our platform. So we will be able to have exactly that ability and capability for achievers, seekers, soloists, and connectors to get the experience they want on the platform that they've been given. Very quickly, we're running out of time. I wanted to talk about one of our customers. You might have seen in the opening graphic, we've 1,400 customers plus worldwide. Over 4 million people using the LiveTiles technology for employee communications and employee experience. This is a customer that I've been doing a bit of work with lately. They were actually featured, their CEO was featured on a BBC article recently, BBC Online, about, the title of the article was, "Does Your Boss Really Care About You?" Have a look at it. He's a great character. He's called Cato. This is him being Anchorman. So the reason I wanted to use the credits safe example is because the quote that came the first time I talked to them, the quote they said, why we love your platform is because it's great for fun and it's great for work. And that was, that has come out yesterday, and again, one of the research somebody had done, 33% of people, that was in the BBC presentation, just want more fun. And yeah, work doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to suck. It's 30% of our lives. It can be fun. So Cato and his team, and they have several thousand employees. They created an internal TV station. They created a podcast show. They created a radio station called Safe FM, all during lockdown. And they also used multilingual messaging to unite all of their different offices. And that, for Cato, that was one of the most important things, because for the very first time, somebody in Norway could write in Norwegian and somebody in Japan could answer in Japanese, and it just really, really brought them together like never before. And we're going to be working with this customer now after the summer holidays on developing a playbook on sort of engagement and belonging for them based on their experiences. And this is from their own research. After rolling out this platform across the company, 97% improvement on the return on client portfolios, because the employee experience had skyrocketed so much. I want to finish with a quote from Dr. Scott Sonnenschein. He's a New York Times bestseller, organizational psychologist, and we were honored to have him as a guest on the launch of our Employee Experience Academy last week, or two weeks ago. So we've launched this academy called the Employee Experience Academy, where we'll be bringing in the best expertise to host all sorts of events, provide lots of resources for communicators, people and culture leaders, etc., to really get under the skin of employee experience and action it, right? It'll be all about the actioning of it and making it real and making it tangible, not just on the thought leadership side, but there will be always a playbook on how to implement and execute. That URL should bring you to the Academy, which invite all of you to join. And we'll be bringing lots of experts. We'll also be dealing with issues that the community itself is asking us to deal with. And I'm hoping personally that we can get Daniel Coyle on board. That will be, we've already reached out. So that, that's a really exciting part, but it just re-emphasizes again that it is always about the people and understanding the people. There's many great technology solutions around, but when you bring these two together, then you get really powerful outcomes. And it's employee experience. It's too important just to sort of delegate to a solution without bringing in this very strong component. So with that, I leave you. I say bedankt. To all my Dutch friends here. And oh yes, I wanted to mention, in our Employee Experience Academy, thank you Victoria, in our Employee Experience Academy, we're going to be running lots of workshops, both virtual and in person. We have 2 up and running at the moment. One is about envisioning. It's like really looking at the why, and that came out yesterday. I don't know if Tom is still here from Danone, but that was like really just stepping back and really looking at the why. My colleague Verena is very involved in that particular workshop. Hi, Verena. And the second one is on moments that matter. We also have one that's coming on values. So the Moments That Matter workshop is really good. It's getting really, really strong response. So what I would like to do is, for those of you that are interested in such workshops, either for your teams or your organizations, and you think that an envisioning workshop or a Moments That Matter workshop or a values workshop would be of interest for you, please put your name on in the bowl. Yeah, you just raise your hand if you're interested, and we'll pick out a name, and we will provide a complimentary workshop. It's a whole afternoon plus several days of prep. So very high value prize, we hope, and it'd be great to be able to continue that with folks. So I don't know if there's any questions. Is anybody interested to enter the raffle for that? Yeah. Okay. So we'll. Verena, can you help maybe, and then we'll get just people write down their names, because if you're not up for it, there's no point in entering. But it's been really interesting. So I don't know if there's any questions at this stage while we're doing that. We're more or less on time, more or less. And if you sign up for the Academy, you'll be getting notifications of all these workshops as well. And we're hoping to do one in this region as well, in person, very soon. We'll be doing them. We're doing one in Geneva, in London, Dublin. People are very time conscious today. After the derailing of the schedule yesterday. Okay, so are we ready to pick out a name? This is very exciting. Is there a fresco in? Good. All those frontline workers. Yeah, going to do the draw now. Yeah. So, are we done? Do we have the bowl full? Everybody's in? If you're not in, you can't win. So it's full? Okay, so drum roll, please. And the winner is Egon Rames Tenet. Well done, Egon. Okay. Thank you very much. I hope that was useful, and looking forward to coffee now. And no more talking for me.
Thank you. It was an excellent talk. Thank you very much.